People love rivers. They'll drive hundreds of miles to spend just one day on the water, sailing, fishing, relaxing. You know, there's something about it that makes you kind of forget your troubles, helps you to unwind. But there's a dark side, too. Every year, the rains come, and the river rises, and then come the floods. In fact, one year of exceptional rainfall, the river changed from a calm, slow-moving friend into a cruel, unpredictable enemy that would sweep away homes and livelihoods and make whole communities destitute. 50 feet above that river down there. Now, one would think that I'm fairly safe, no chance of getting wet, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because there's a good chance. That river has risen so high, it's overflowed the bank right here. In fact, let me show you something. Now, in 1963, that river rose that high, right up to my knees. 1930, up to here. On these dates, up that high. 1933, then 1948 was way over my head. Then we go up to 1913. That was a disaster year. Many, many lives were lost. But then, in 1937, it rose to the unbelievable height of 80 feet.
The Ohio River travels 1,000 miles from its source near Pittsburgh to its junction with the Mississippi, and along that 1,000 miles, there are 75 tributaries feeding into it. Most years, after the winter snow and rains, you can guarantee that it will flood. And when on January the 2nd, 1937, the rain began to fall without stopping, it looked a certainty. But in those first few days, nobody could imagine that this would be the worst disaster the Ohio Valley had ever seen. They thought it was just another flood.
I'd call up on the hour, and Grandma, of course, was still here, and I'd say, Grandma, where is the water now? Is it up to the peach tree yet? In the backyard. Grandma would say, no. I said, how far? Oh, it's a good piece from the peach tree yet. I said, okay. And next hour, call up, Grandma, how far is it? Is it up to the peach tree yet? It's almost up to the peach tree. And I said to everybody in the office would say, how far is the flood?
Across the street that I could see, there was a furniture store. It was Maddox's furniture store, and I would watch the letters disappear because it was a slight incline, and so as the water came up, little parts of the letters would go, and I'd say, well, there goes the A.
The tributaries filled, overflowed, and yet still continued to pour into the main river. The rain that would at one time have been absorbed by the earth now fell on concrete and paving where the fields had been built over. There was nowhere for it to run but into the drains which carried it to the already swollen river.
During the month of January, we had roughly the equivalent of 6 months' rain in 1 month. I think we had rain on, about 35 days. Now, that doesn't mean it rained constantly, but I think on about 35 or so consecutive days, we did have rainfall.
No conventional means of prediction could tell the people of the Ohio Valley what to expect.
But I was taught by my grandfather that if you see a clear line of fog above the water along the Ohio River for 2 or 3 miles, you can just bet your bottom dollar that that river is going to go to that fog line, and it'll do it within 14 days. In the case of the 37 flood, I noticed the fog line, and it was up in the eaves on some houses across the river. And in less than 2 weeks, those houses were gone.
Back in those days, we would try, based on what was coming down the river and the rainfall up the river, we would try to forecast or predict the stage to expect. But it finally got, in the last few days before it did crest, that we'd just say, well, we just don't know.
We had no idea, no time in history